marriage.
Okay, babe, today, what are we doing today do we have a question? This is an interesting subject for marriage, huh?
It is. Well, I think it's actually something that every couple that's married has had to deal with at some point. And for us, I feel like it was pretty simple, but for others,
well, it's something that always changes too, I think.
Yeah, well, that's true.
And needs to change maybe.
That's true. So the question is how do you divide up chores?
Responsibilities at home, you know, how do you divide all that up? Well, for us, it was a lot easier. And I will we'll answer this question broadly because there's many different kinds of people watching, I'm sure, hopefully. And there are people that have one income household like ours where I go and work and you stay home with the kids and stay at home. So that makes it a little bit easier. You know, because you're at home, so the majority of the household chores are going to fall on your shoulders.
Right.
However, when you have a house where you have two people working, that does complicate things a little bit.
So then I guess you should divide it 50-50?
Absolutely not. I should just come home and be able to watch TV and you cook dinner and clean up and everything, right?
Oh, is that how you think it should be?
No. So early on in our marriage, we both worked until you had Abigail.
Right.
No, we didn't both work. Well, I worked, you worked until you had Abigail, and then you stayed home for the rest of the time.
Right. Till now. Still home.
And so early on, it was a lot easier. And I think a lot of people don't plan for this. They just kind of expect things to happen. And we were watching a funny video where I expect how I was raised for you to do what I grew up doing, like my mom did, and you expect me to do what your dad did, we're gonna be at odds.
Right. Well, we both come to marriage, and everybody does, with expectations. And you look at your parents and see how they interacted with each other, see how they divided up chores, and you kind of expect maybe going into it, that's what it's gonna be like.
That's right. So I'm like, hey, my mom always. Well, I did dishes, but she made supper, and she always had a good supper, and so I should expect a good supper. Well, what if you're not like my mom, So that
Still working on that.
No, it's fine. You've exceeded my mom. Sorry, Mom. But in the same way, maybe your dad did everything, and that's not me, and so there's different expectations. So we don't just assume these things. We have to communicate these things. Now, we probably assumed things going in because when we got married, we're both working, and then we came home and it was easy. It was just us. And we were in love. So we just cooked together. We cleaned together. We did everything together, right? Yeah, that was nice and sweet. Until we started having kids. And
that's when you said, well, you're home all day, so surely you can do everything.
Pretty much. Right? So, no, but and kind of you just assume that too, that you're home. So why not? Why wouldn't you do the laundry? Why wouldn't you do the dishes and things like that and have supper ready? But you're also dealing with kids. Yeah. And so that's a handful at times, most of the time. And so I need to be sensitive to that and not always expect. And if I come home and things aren't done, be like, what have you been doing all day? Never say that, by the way. Yeah, never say that.
Probably not.
What have you been doing? So anyway, what we did in our house was when our kids were a certain age, they would participate in doing dishes. So at that point, I kind of backed away from doing the dishes and let the kids do it. And you always enjoyed doing the dishes and became like your own time with the kids doing dishes.
Yeah.
But you can't just assume these things. You have to figure it out. Now, like I said, for us, this was easy because you were at home.
I was at home, and not like that, but I like cleaning. I like doing dishes. I like just those things came naturally to me, and I really wanted to make you happy. Sure. And so I'm like, I'll do the things that I like doing, and it makes me happy, and it makes you happy. So for us, it really just worked well.
And I like having things done for me, so that really helped out. I don't want to ruin her gift. So
well, but I will say that I heard sometime somebody said that you should ask your husband what's important to him. And I know that was a big deal for me because I wanted everything to always be spotless. And of course, we had a bunch of kids really fast, so it was hard to keep everything spotless.
It is really difficult.
And so I remember somebody saying that I should ask you what's important to you, because I might spend all day like mopping the floor, and yet there's laundry everywhere you could see, and I'm like, but the floor is clean. And so I remember asking, and you were like, well, dishes and laundry, those are the big things that you just didn't want laundry everywhere, and you didn't want piles of dishes.
Can I change that now? And,
Maybe.
I mean, that's true. And but from my perspective, I have to be. If those things are important to me and they're not getting done, then I have to step up and do them instead of complain and get upset. And say, well, these things are important to me, and maybe communicate those things and say, hey, if you could help us out by doing these things, make sure they're done do those first.
Right.
But if not, that's my way of helping out is like, hey, this needs to get done. Well, whatever needs to get done. Obviously, you want to help each other, whatever needs to be done. When you're in a 2-income house and people are both working, that is a challenge.
Yeah.
I can only imagine it's a challenge because you come home. My job is a physical job and I get tired. And to come home and to have to cook and clean up would be a drag. But I would assume my wife feels the same way.
Yeah.
Not you because you don't work. But if
if she's working
my
all day.
other wife, so. But the working woman feels the exact same way. Like, hey, well, I've been working all day.
Yeah.
So it's imperative that you guys come up with some agreement. And places that I go to, the solution usually is you get someone, you hire someone to take care of some of those big issues. And obviously dinner, you kind of figure out yourself.
Right. Well,
but
and I
some
will
of the
say,
major cleaning, you get someone else to do.
Right. I will say that if for husbands out there that think that their wives should, since they're home all day with the kids, they should, keep up on dishes and laundry and whatever. If it's frustrating you that something's not being done, then that's up to you to try to figure out, not instead of coming home and saying, you still didn't do it. It's like, well, you're maybe I'm overwhelmed. Maybe I don't. I'm just not good at it.
It's my job as a husband I'm head of the home, and so everything falls on me.
Right.
If things aren't getting done, it's not your fault.
Yeah.
I mean, it might be your fault, but the buck stops with me. So it's my responsibility to make sure those things are getting done. Now, that doesn't mean strong arm you into it. Okay, this is too much for you. It's I need to make sure it gets done instead of get upset like a lot of husbands do.
Yeah.
How about you get home and start working? Because it's funny how a woman's job never stops. If she's a stay-at-home mom, or even if she's a working mom, she comes home and she's still a mom, which means a lot of things are usually taken care of. And a lot of guys kind of check out at that point. They come home and be like, hey, man, I worked. But your wife is still working. So that's when you need to step up and like whatever needs to be done, go and do it. That is the major thing. Now, I will tell you, it does help to have kids. As they get older, they can take over and do a lot of the things. The problem is then when they move out, then what do? You got to remember what you did. You got to go back.
But not only just have kids. Obviously, there's a lot that goes into training them.
Sure.
Because in those early years, if we hadn't taken the time to train them,
that is true.
It wouldn't have worked well.
Which would slow you down in your working,
for sure.
And might push you back on some of your cleaning and all that. But anyway, that is what you have to talk about these things. You have to be on the same page, and sometimes you might have to discuss these things a little bit longer than you would originally hoped, but you have to realize that you came from different worlds, most likely, and that your expectations aren't always going to be met. And if my mom did something a certain way, I can't just assume you did that, and same thing.
Right.
So don't assume, make a plan, and talk about it.